I want to say to the people that are watching us live on the internet, good afternoon. And as always, it is good to stand before you on one of the Lord's high Sabbath days. In fact, this is the high Sabbath that caused the people that have no understanding to come up with Good Friday. Everybody knew that the seventh day was the Sabbath day, even after Emperor Constantine forced people to worship on Sunday. So being that the Passover, which Jesus died on, was before the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is a high Sabbath or an annual Sabbath, and they didn't know about the high Sabbath, so they said he must have died on Friday. That's why they call it Good Friday.
Right.
However, he died in the midst of the week. So, sisters and brothers, it is one thing, as long as ignorance prevail, people will make mistakes. And as long as nobody around you is telling the truth, God might even blink at you a little bit. But the day going to come, sisters and brothers, and that day is now. Because the prophet Daniel said the day going to come when they're going to run to and fro in the streets and knowledge is going to be increased. This is the day of knowledge. We are the generation that are supposed to get this thing right and to continue. But if you insist on holding the old tradition, I'm here to warn you, you're going to get yourself cut off.
Right.
Because the Lord had all this book written and he wants you to know about it. So we're going to start this high Sabbath day, which is the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. We're going to start in Leviticus, the 23rd chapter. Now, you're supposed to remove all the leaven out of your house on this night. All the leavened bread, sisters and brothers, all leavened bread, not leaven agent. Like people throw out yeast, they throw out egg, they throw out this. It is not the Feast of Unleavened Agents. It is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. If it is not bread or if it's not cake or something that's, people don't know cake ain't nothing but sweet bread. If it's not that, you don't throw your baking soda out. You don't throw your baking powder out. You don't throw your eggs out. You don't even throw your yeast out. Only when it's in bread and the bread is risen. That's what leaven means, yep. Risen. Okay? So now we're going to start at verse 1, Leviticus 23, because this is the chapter that the Lord had written to let everybody know what his plan is, sisters and brothers. We have no reason to be uninformed nowadays because the Lord has opened the doors. We're going to start at verse 1. Go ahead and read.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speaking to the children of Israel and saying to them,
go ahead,
concerning the feast of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feasts.
See, and I always like to stress where it says concerning the feast of the Lord, not the feast of the Jews, the feast of the Lord. These are his days, his high days that he wants us to keep because he have a reason, and we're going to show it to you. Because a lot of people that keep these days is just ritual. Why we do? Well, the Lord said, well, what is the reason? Even the Lord wants you to have an understanding why he's doing something.
Yep.
Because God don't do rituals. God disseminate knowledge. Skip down to verse 4 and go ahead.
These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations,
go ahead,
which ye shall proclaim in their seasons.
These are holy gatherings, a solemn assemblies, which you shall proclaim in their season. You have to do everything in the time that the Lord said. Like we have some brothers that had the Passover last month, which was the 14th day of the 13th, almost 13th month. The Lord said, Abib is the first month of the year unto you. You cannot have it until the first month come around.
Yes, sir.
Every 3 years, sisters and brothers, we have what you call, I wouldn't call it a leap year. What we call is you have 13 new moons. When that happens, you put the extra time at the end, not in the beginning. So always the Lord said his days are in the month Abib. This is the beginning of months to you. So now, go ahead and read.
And the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread unto the Lord.
Now, we had the Passover Wednesday. That was the 14th. Now we have in this because we have it in the daytime of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, but this is the 15th day of the month Abib. This is the Lord's Feast of Unleavened Bread. Go ahead and read, because people mix this up. It gave you two different dates here, didn't it? 14 and 15 cannot be the same. Go ahead and read.
7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. And the first day ye shall have an holy convocation.
Go ahead.
Ye shall do no servile work therein, but ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord 7 days. And the 7 days in holy convocation, ye shall do no servile work therein.
Now it says 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, sisters and brothers. 7 days, not 8, not 6, not 9. But I think we need to clear something up, because sometimes there's a confusion every year where, you know, when you look at the Passover, you had unleavened bread with the Passover, and so now you had 7 other days that make 8. I want you to understand something, sisters and brothers. Leavening represents sin. And you cannot be free of sin until a sin offer has been made, or either blood has been shedded for sin.
Right.
Because it is good for us to understand. In fact, we're going to do a little Passover again to show you how it is that you cannot have 8 days, because you cannot be clean, because man is born in sin. And the only thing that can clean or purge you is the blood of the Lamb.
Yes, sir.
But we're going to give you an example. Let's go into Exodus, the 12th chapter. I thought I'd throw this in and link this, because so many people are confused and keep trying to separate the unleavened bread and to make it stand alone. Well, it is stand alone, but it's a continuation of something. And we need to look at this continuation. At Exodus, the 12th chapter. Exodus chapter 12. We're going to start with the Passover, because you need to know these things, sisters and brothers, so you won't make error and your understanding won't be lacking. The Lord told you to get wisdom and knowledge, but with all your getting, get understanding. You need to know what you're doing. Understand what you're doing. So when somebody comes and put a wrinkle in it, you're not pushed off the side of the hill.
That's right.
Or not knocked off the dime, as they say in the old days. Exodus 12 and 1. Go ahead and read.
And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you.
Now this is the beginning of the month. This is the month Abib. You cannot have the unleavened bread and Passover in any other month. Go ahead and read.
Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house.
Now you got to take on the 10th day, you got to put up a lamb. Skip down to verse 5 and go ahead.
Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year.
Go ahead.
Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats.
Now this lamb has to be perfect, sisters and brothers. Won't have no blemish, and it has to be the firstborn. You cannot go down to the supermarket and buy you a lamb.
Right.
Like I say all the time, that look, if you're going to do this, sometimes people are still killing the lamb, sisters and brothers. So to the people that are still killing the lamb, I'm going to tell you right now, you don't even know how to do wrong right. So I'm going to teach you how to do wrong right. Get your female lamb. And when she get grown, her first male that she have, you get this male lamb. Then you examine him and make sure he don't have a split hoof or a beat up hoof or any spots or sores on it. Then you put him up on the 10th day. And you keep him till the 14th day. Then you kill the lamb.
Yep.
Don't cut his head off. Don't cut his feet off. Don't even gut him. Just skin him and roast him alive. And I guess you eat around everything else.
Right.
That's how to do wrong right. But then I hope you don't live in an apartment, because you got to put the blood over the doorpost. You can get evicted for that. Where are we now?
We're in the 6th verse.
So much for that. Go ahead and read.
And ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. The whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening.
Go ahead.
And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the 2 side posts and on the upper doorposts of the houses, wherein they shall eat it.
Now, when you do that, you have to put the blood over your doorposts and on the side posts. Why is that? Skip down to verse 12. Verse 12 and go ahead.
For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and I will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast.
Go ahead.
And against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord.
Now, he's going to come through Egypt, and he is going to kill the firstborn in every house, sisters and brothers, in every house. He said, because I am the Lord. And go ahead.
And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. He
said, now look, when I see the blood is going to be a token to you. Token of what? It is a token of your faith, sisters and brothers. Because if you believe that the Lord told Moses that he was not going to kill your firstborn, if you put the blood over your doorpost, then that's letting the Lord know you have faith enough to be saved.
Yes, sir.
Therefore, I can clean you up. But if you don't have no faith, you won't put the blood over your doorpost. Oh, I don't believe in that. Then the Lord said, okay, I'm going to kill everybody in your household. He said, but when I see the blood, I'm going to pass over that house. That's what Passover means. It actually means pass over. Don't mean communion. Don't mean sacrament. And you ain't got no rights, especially no last rights. It means pass over. How long should you do this? Go ahead and read.
And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and you shall keep it a feast to the Lord throughout your generations.
And it shall be a memorial. Remember, to remind you that blood is what saved you, not your righteousness. Blood is what saved you, not because you was an Israelite. My brothers, pay attention. Not because you was an Israelite.
Right.
It's because you had faith. And your faith is what saved you. And he said, and this shall be kept throughout your generation, and it shall be held as a feast throughout your generation. For years, sisters and brothers, because it come before the Feast of Unleavened Bread, I used to think that this feast means the beginning of unleavened bread. No, Passover was a feast. It was a feast. But what we got to understand is that this Passover, the Lord gave you a big message. What it is, your faith is what's going to save you. That's the big message right there. And the people that put the blood, that same blood, is what purged their sins. We're going to come back here because I want to throw this in. I just need to throw this in because it's something we need to understand. Keep your marker here. Let's go to 1 Corinthians, the 5th chapter. 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Because sometimes there are a few dots that have to be put together before you can fully understand what the Lord is doing. 1 Corinthians, the 5th chapter. 1 Corinthians, the 5th chapter. And we're going to start reading at verse 7. 1 Corinthians chapter 5. And we're going to start reading at verse 7. Because this needs to be understood, sisters and brothers. Verse 7, read it.
Purge out therefore the old leaven.
Purge out therefore the old leaven. Go ahead and read.
That ye may be a new lump.
That you might be a new lump. If you purge out the old leaven, and leaven represents sin, sisters and brothers, then you are free from sin. You're altogether something new. So purge out therefore the old leaven, that you might be a new lump. Go ahead and read.
As ye are unleavened. For even Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us.
For even Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us. See, sisters and brothers, you cannot purge the leaven until the blood is shed.
Right.
Because the Lord said the blood shall be a token unto you. When I see the blood, I'm going to pass over that house. So you cannot have the 14-day leaven free because the leaven represents sin. It wasn't no accident that the Lord said 7 days over and over and over, because he wants you to understand that you cannot be leaven free or sin free until the sin offering have been made. Go ahead, the next verse.
Therefore, let us keep the feast, not with old leaven.
Therefore, let us keep the feast, but not with old leaven. Go ahead and read.
Neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness.
Neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness. Go ahead and read.
But with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth.
But with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. In other words, you have been purged. You have been washed by the blood. Now you have to continue to purge it.
Right.
How long must this go on? Now let's go back to Exodus the 12th chapter. I told you to keep the place there. Exodus the 12th chapter. And we're going to start reading at verse 15. Exodus 12 and verse 15. Because this is a continuation. You can't have one without the other. What's this buzz I'm hearing in here? If it's somebody's telephone, I'm going to start collecting your phones at the door if you keep this up. Exodus 12 and 15. Go ahead.
7 days shall you eat unleavened bread.
Now, 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. Go ahead and read.
Even the first day you shall put away leaven out of your house. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel.
In other words, since you've been washed by the blood, then get rid of your sin.
Right.
And whosoever continue in sin after the blood has been shed shall be cut off from among his people. Y'all understand what the Lord? You're getting the real message now. We're not dealing with the rituals now. We're dealing with the message. Mm-hmm. Even though you have to do it physically, get the bread, but understand the spiritual side of it. Because leaven is a sin, sisters and brothers. That's what it represents. Go ahead and read. What verse?
16. And in the first day, there shall be an holy convocation. And in the 7th day, there shall be an holy convocation.
Go ahead.
To you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you.
Now, we just learned something, didn't we? No manner of work. Every now and then, even the preacher learns something. Save that which you must eat.
Yep.
How long? First day and the 7th day. These are holy days, sisters and brothers. And you're supposed to be unleavened what? For 7 days. Why 7 days, Brother Boyd? Because the Lord gave man 7,000 years to exist as man. After the 7,000 years, there ain't no more man left. Most people don't understand that it was no accident that Jesus rose on the 7th day. Because that's the last day that man is supposed to be man. From that day forward, you are God. Or whatever else is called in the lake of fire. Either way it goes, you are an immortal. That's why I tell people all the time, you better watch this thing. Because if you was born into this world, you're gonna live forever. But you have to decide where you're going to live at. Don't think that this book is jiving. Because I've looked back and everything that the prophet said that was supposed to happen in the old days happened. I'm looking at prophecy right now when I look at the European Economic Community. I'm looking at it when I see Russia putting their house in order. I'm looking at it when I read all the time how they're preparing for the priesthood with the people over there and they're getting ready to build a temple. It is about to happen. And I know it's going to happen because I saw what happened yesterday. Mm-hmm. So he said, look, you got to keep this. Go ahead and read.
17. And ye shall observe the feast of unleavened bread. For in this same day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall ye observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever.
Now he said, you have observed this feast of unleavened bread. Because this same day I brought you your armies out of Egypt. Look, the Lord delivered Israel out of Egypt on the 15th day, not the 14th. They couldn't even come out of the house on the 14th. Skip down to verse 21 and go ahead.
Then Moses called for the elders of Israel and said unto them, draw out and take you a lamb according to your families and kill the Passover. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, strike it on the lintel and the two side posts with the blood that is in the basin, and none of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning. Now
that let me know that they didn't leave on the 14th. So the 14th and the 15th can't be the same, did it?
Nope.
Because on the 14th day of the month of Abib, on the day of Passover, Moses said that night don't even come out of your house. So you can't travel while you're sitting in your living room. You got to stay in the house. But we just read on unleavened bread, he said the same day came he out, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
Skip down to verse 29 and go ahead.
And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne, and to the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle.
Now the Lord went through and he hit the firstborn of everything. He left nothing. Go ahead and read.
And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt.
Go ahead.
But there was not a house where there was not one dead.
That was the Egyptians because they didn't believe Moses. Some of the servants started to believe Moses at somewhere along the line because when Moses said he's going to bring hail and kill the cattle, some of them took their servants and cattle and took them in the house. But I guess after a while they lost the faith, some of them. You know why? Because it said there was not a house, that there was not one dead. In other words, they didn't believe, therefore their children died, sisters and brothers. That is what a lack of faith would do to you.
Yep.
Skip down to verse 33. Verse 33 and go ahead.
And the Egyptians were urging upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste. But they said, we be all dead men.
I guess I'd say that too. Go ahead and read.
And the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptian jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment.
Now look, he said they took their kneading trough. Well, I guess when they make the bread, before it was leavening. You understand? And they put it on their shoulder. It's obvious that whatever they used, it took some time to leaven, probably before they cooked it. Either way it go, the leavening was in it, sisters and brothers. It's not that they had to go and take the leavening out of it or come up with dough that didn't have leavening in it. The leavening was in it already. What verse are we?
Skip down to verse 38.
Down to verse 38. Skip down to verse 38 and go ahead.
And the mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle.
See, when Israel come out of Egypt, it was a mixed multitude. A whole lot of people believed in the God of Israel when Moses got through with them. That's what happened when the Lord's words started to come to pass. People found out, hey, this is a pretty good God here. He's real strong. I'm on his side. I'm going to go with his people. Go ahead and read.
And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they brought forth out of Egypt. For it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not tarry, neither had they prepared for themselves any victuals.
Now, not that they didn't have leavening in the dough. It's just that they didn't have time for it to rise because they were thrown out of Egypt, so they had to bake unleavened bread. So the rising time was gone. So that don't mean that they didn't have yeast or whatever in the bread. What it's telling you is that they didn't have time for the bread to rise. So they baked the bread just like it was because they was thrown out of Egypt, sisters and brothers. And that's the way it was because the Lord wanted you to know that this unleavened bread had a reason. It stands for something more than just flat bread. That's why he wants us to keep this feast every year to remind us how he delivered us. Every physical deliverance represents a spiritual deliverance. Let's go into Deuteronomy, the 14th, 16th chapter, and we're going to pursue it. Because we want to lay this thing bare so people won't have a misconception of what this is all about. Deuteronomy, the 16th chapter. And we're going to start reading at verse 1. Deuteronomy, the 16th chapter. And we're going to start reading at verse 1. 16 and 1. Okay, go ahead.
Now Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, and Dathan, and Abiram, the son of Elishib, and On, the son of Peleth, the son of Reuben, took men.
Wait a minute, you sure you're in the right place? I'm drinking water. Did I say 16 chapters?
You said 16?
Don't you have some notes in front of you?
Yeah, I do.
And he'd wonder why every time he read for me, I threaten to fine. Deuteronomy 16 and verse 1. Maybe his Bible is ragged and it's tore out. Go ahead and read then.
Observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover unto the Lord thy God. For the month of Abib, the Lord thy God brought thee forth out of Egypt by night.
Now let's tell you the month of Abib. The first month, he brought you out of Egypt by night. So now if he brought you out by night and you couldn't come out of your house until daybreak, this can't be the same 2 days, can it? 2 different days. So when somebody bring that to you, read a little book to them. Go ahead and read.
Thou shalt therefore sacrifice the Passover unto the Lord thy God of the flock and the herd in the place which the Lord shall choose to place his name there.
Go ahead.
Thou shalt eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread therewith, even the bread of affliction. For thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt in haste, that thou mayest remember the day when thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt all the days of thy life.
So now he lets you know not to eat unleavened bread with the Passover. But then he turned around and said 7 days you should eat unleavened bread. Lets you know that these are 2 different feasts, sisters and brothers. One feast represents the wiping clean of sin, and the other feast represents the maintaining the stand clean from sin. Maintain the condition that the Lord put you in. Just like he washed your clothes, now it's up to you to keep it from getting dirty again. 2 different feasts all together. But you can't have one without the other. Well, you know, I got dirty clothes, clean clothes. When do you want? Well, it was dirty yesterday. When you wash them, oh, I felt that they was dirty. No, you got a machine. In other words, you can't have unleavened without Passover. And the Lord said, once that you have been cleansed, I want you to stay clean for 7 days. Go ahead and read.
4. And there shall be no leavened bread seen within all thy coast 7 days. Neither shall there anything of the flesh which thou sacrificest the first day at even remain all night until the morning.
So the lamb on the Passover, other places tell you burn that. I don't want none of that left. Because when Jesus come out the grave, went back to heaven, wasn't none of him left. And when they went to the grave and rolled back the stone, there was none of Jesus in there. Because this is all represent Jesus and his death. But then if you was a Christian, you would know this. But he said you should have this feast. You should have this feast. But the lamb, I want none of it left. Skip down to verse 8. Verse 8 and go ahead.
6 days thou shalt eat unleavened bread. On the 7th day shall be a solemn assembly to the Lord thy God. Thou shalt do no work therein. Now it says 6 days. See, this is why you have to have some knowledge. 6 days thou shalt have eat unleavened bread. On the 7th day shall be a solemn assembly. Oh, that means that I eat unleavened bread for 6 days. And on the 7th day, I just have a meat. That's what it would look like. I don't eat no unleavened bread. I don't do no feasting. If I didn't know better, I'd be messed up here. But I know better, and the Lord made sure I know better. You know why I know better? Let's go back to Exodus, the 13th chapter, and show you why. Because it looked like he changed that. 6 days. I thought it was 7. But he said 7 over and over again. So that means that somebody should not change that quick. Exodus 13 and 1. Go ahead. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Sanctify unto me all the firstborn, whatsoever openeth the womb among the children of Israel, both a man and a beast. It is mine.
Go ahead.
And Moses said unto the people, Remember this day in which ye came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for by strength of hand of the Lord brought you out from this place.
Now the Lord is so fair until he said, I done killed the firstborn of the Egyptians, so the firstborn, the man among Israel and the beasts are mine. But he had you redeem the male children. In other lesson we'll show you. And you had to break the neck or kill the animal that replaced him. Mm-hmm. Because the God is the God of all. Even say he said the God of Israel, he's the God of all people. And the only reason we're Israel because we are the first that was adopted. But he's going to adopt everybody. So he said, I want you to redeem the firstborn of man and beast. They mine.
Right.
Just like I killed the firstborn in Egypt. And Moses said, remember now, the Lord brought you out of Egypt. Go ahead and read.
There shall no leavened bread be eaten. This day came ye out in the month Abib. And it shall be when the Lord shall bring thee into the land of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, which he sware to their fathers to give thee, a land flowing with milk and honey, that thou shalt keep this service in this month.
Go ahead. 7
days thou shalt eat unleavened bread. And in the 7th day shall be a feast to the Lord.
So we did. Now this let us know that solemn assembly is still a feast, isn't it?
Yep.
Because all feast days are solemn feast days, sisters and brothers. It's all that simple. Solemn. That means something very, very holy. Something very, very important to God. That's why it's also called a holy convocation. 7 days, sisters and brothers. 7 days, not 8. Because you cannot do it 8 days because you wasn't clean on the day before the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
Right.
Jesus ate the Passover that night. He ate the Passover that night. But he didn't die until the daytime of the Passover. That's why I said the evening and the morning is the first day of the week. And when Jesus died, it was about 3 o'clock in the evening. The day was about spent. And when he died, that's when the veil of the temple ripped. That's when your sins was covered, just like the people was down there in Egypt. Now you're unleavened. So the next day is the first day of your life because you are clean. That's like I tell people a lot of times when I used to do baptizing, something I used to say all the time. Now this is the first day of your life. You are starting out clean. Whatever you have done, however ugly it was, however dirty or low down it was, if you really repented and you got in that water, and when you come out that water, you're clean. Because you have been washed by the blood. That's why I said, purge out there for the old leaven,
that you may be a new lump.
That you might be a new lump. These things you got to understand, sisters and brothers. Now let's go into Exodus, the 14th chapter. Exodus chapter 14. Because when the Lord did this, he wants you to understand, I did a whole thing so you will understand what I'm doing. And these feasts must be kept. 14:1. Go ahead and read.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speaking to the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp before Bahireth, between Migdol and the sea over against Baal-zephon. Before it shall ye encamp by the sea.
Go ahead.
And Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land. The wilderness have shut them in.
Go ahead.
And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them. And I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all his hosts, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord that did so.
Now, the Egyptians obviously wasn't convinced enough, but then the big thing is the Lord really had a bone to pick with Egypt, sister and brother. Now, he done brought 10 plagues on them and killed the firstborn, but he wasn't through yet. He said, I'm going to do me one more hit on the Pharaoh. Go ahead and read.
And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and of his servants was turned against the people. And they said, why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us?
Ain't that something? That's why the Lord was mad. He said, they done served you for 400 years. You done abused them. You done did everything to them. Now I'm going to spring them. I got to take me one more hit. So the Lord hardened their heart. All of a sudden, wait a minute. Why did we let these servants go? This cheap labor. Because they destroyed your water. They forgot about that, turned to blood. They forgot about the plague. They forgot about the lice. They forgot about the frogs. They forgot about the death of the firstborn. All they could think was, look at here. We had us some free labor here.
That was crazy.
So we're going to stop this. Go ahead and read.
And he made ready his chariot and took his people with him.
So he got ready and took his people with him to pursue Israel. Skip down to verse 10 and go ahead.
And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. And they were so afraid.
Go ahead.
And the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord.
Now, you know, this people is afraid. Now, the Lord done destroyed Egypt down to the ground. What you scared of?
Right.
I would have been thinking, oh, y'all ain't got enough, huh?
Right.
But I'm going to show you what my God going to do to you. But they're so afraid. Skip down to verse 13 and go ahead.
And Moses said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord.
See, Moses knew what was going on. He wasn't afraid. He said, why y'all stop fearing? Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Go ahead and read.
Which he will show you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. He
said, look, these Egyptians that coming at you, you ain't going to see them no more. Skip down to verse 19. Let's see what happened. Verse 19, go ahead.
And the angel of the Lord which went before the camp of Israel removed and went behind them. And the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them.
So the angel went and stood in between Israel and Egypt, and the Lord is in the cloud, so he went too, because he was calling the shots with the angels. Go ahead and read.
And it came to pass, and it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. And it was a cloud and darkness to them.
Go ahead.
But it gave light by night to these, so that the one came not near the other all the night.
Now ain't that something? Now it was already night, but the Lord let it stay night on the Egyptian side, and he put the light on the Israelite side. Because you won't know where you're going if you can't see where you're going. So the Lord was working now. But it was that night. Remember, he said this self-same night came you out. So it was the night of the 15th day of the month Abib. And it took the Lord a minute to split that sea. Go ahead and read.
And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided.
So the Lord took time to divide the water, and it dried out. Go ahead and read.
And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left.
So when they went in there, they looked and saw big stories of water on each side. And that's let me know that the Lord hardened these Egyptian heart. I wouldn't have did this, man. Go ahead and read.
And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them to the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen.
Ain't no way. Only God would make me do that. That's why I know he hardened their heart. Then when you done seen him split this sea, then you see these people go down in there, and he done destroyed Egypt, and you going to pursue them in it? Hey, you have to have God have to be in your head somewhere to make you do that. That's why I know that if you mess around with the Lord, he'll mess around with you.
Yeah, he will.
Go ahead and read. What verse?
24. And it came to pass that in the morning watch the Lord looked into the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians.
How did he do that?
And took off their chariot wheels, that they drave them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians.
Finally, them Egyptian light bulb come on, didn't it?
Too late.
Go ahead and read.
And the Lord said to Moses, stretch out thine hand over the sea, that the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen.
Finally, them Egyptians got the message. Ain't that something? Can you imagine in your mind that God is in the cloud, and he's taking the wheels off the Egyptian chariot? He do practical stuff. You understand what I'm saying? He didn't send no astral form down there and stand in between. He just simply took the wheels off the chariot.
That's all.
Finally, the bulb come on, the Egyptians said, look here, the Lord is fighting for Israel. Now they're going to try to run away from it. The Lord said, put the staff over the water now. Let's see what happened. Go ahead and read.
And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it.
Ain't
and
that something? That water coming down on them, and they're running, trying to outrun it. Go ahead and read.
And the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea.
Go ahead.
And the waters returned and covered the chariots, the horsemen, and all the hosts of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. Now, there remained not so much as one of them.
I mean, he drowned them all. Pharaoh and his whole army, sisters and brothers. His whole army. That let me know he had something in for Pharaoh. Skip down to verse 30 and read.
Thus the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore.
And they saw all them bodies laying up there. And this is the people that went crazy in the wilderness. You seen all of this? And then you wondered, why did the Lord send his people in captivity? Why did he make them slaves, male and female? Why they were mistreated? Because they was stupid.
Yeah, they was.
You got the true and living God to destroy everybody before you and everybody behind you. And you going to rebel against him? If that ain't stupidity, what is it?
Right.
And among Israelites, this stupidity still prevails. But then I ain't going to get into that today. I'm going to be nice. Let's go into Numbers, the 33rd chapter. But I do things, sisters and brothers, for a reason. This is one of the reasons that I even inserted this part, sisters and brothers, because of stupidity. Numbers chapter 33. You'd be surprised of stuff. When I started out this lesson, with just a few little scriptures, boom, 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 we go eat. Then somebody else come up with something stupid. So I got to add something there to clear that up.
Right.
And somebody else come up with something stupid. So I got to ask, all of a sudden, I got me 10, 12, 15 scriptures.
Right.
What started out with 4 or 5. Now let me show you what I'm saying. They said, what it said, still saying that the first night of the Feast of Unleavened Bread and Passover the same night, right?
Right.
Now let's see why I did this. 33 and 1. 33 and 1. Go ahead.
These are the journeys of the children of Israel, which went forth out of the land of Egypt with their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron.
Go ahead.
And Moses wrote their goings out according to their journey by the commandment of the Lord.
Go ahead.
And these are their journeys according to their going out. And they departed from Ramesses in the first month.
They withdrew from Ramesses in the first month. Go ahead.
On the 15th day of the first month.
On the 15th day of the first month. Go ahead.
On the morrow after the Passover.
On the morrow after the Passover. Finish that verse.
The children of Israel went out with an high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians.
Now that's the only reason that I inserted this into this lesson. Because you got people running around saying the Passover and first day of living a Feast of Unleavened Bread are the same night. So I have to go, even though it is clear in the 23rd chapter of Leviticus, I still have to go back and read this. I had to insert this. So if they came out on the 15th day of the first month, the morrow after the Passover, then what day is the 14th day? The Passover.
Right.
That's simple, ain't it?
Yep.
I had to add that and give it to people so they could turn back some of this foolishness that's brought forth by Israel. Now let's go into Deuteronomy, the 16th chapter. That's why, brother, sometimes always, brother, you know, you be too hard on Israel. You need to be hard on Israel. It ain't hard as God was on it.
Right.
You understand? And I see why, and I ain't doing it because of out of viciousness. I'm doing it so this brother would take a look at himself. We are our problem. You understand? We are. And if you turn to God, he'll turn to you. And if you serve him with all your might, he will do great things for you. See, I can attest to that because he's done great things for me. You understand? This facility is a great thing. 24 churches? That's a great thing.
It is.
everything that upholds them, the feast and everything. When the feast comes, everybody send their shopping list in. This one I need this. This. Write a check to all of them or either transfer to all of them and still got money. That's a great thing.
Yeah, it is.
You understand what I'm saying? All you got to do is believe on this God.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
But don't nobody want to do it. Mm-hmm. Deuteronomy 16 and verse 16. Deuteronomy 16 and verse 16. Okay, go ahead.
3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose.
That's all the males, sisters and brothers. Actually, they were supposed to be all the males on the planet. Israel dropped the ball and didn't teach the people. That's another thing that we had to pay for. Mm-hmm. Now in these last days, once we find out that we are the chosen priests, we still trying to keep it. Well, we're the only one that the Lord's going to save. Boy, I said, when is this brother going to outgrow stupidity? He said 3 times a year, I want all the males. Another scripture let you know you bring your wife and your children and everybody else too, and the strangers. But right. I don't have time to read it all. Right. Go ahead and read.
In the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
The Feast of Unleavened Bread, that's what we keep it now. Go ahead.
And the Feast of Weeks.
The Feast of Weeks, which is called Pentecost. Go ahead and read.
And the Feast of Tabernacle.
And the Feast of Tabernacle. That represents the feast where the Lord, that's in gathering, when the Lord is going to come and start gathering all his people. Go ahead and read.
And they shall not appear before the Lord empty.
And you shall not appear before the Lord empty. A lot of people go there and fake the money thing. You don't put nothing in it. Don't fake it tonight. Today, sisters and brothers. This is a commandment. That $10 that you're going to go to the movie with tomorrow, right. You better put it in the box back there. Even though $10 don't mean too much to Israeli God, but I take it.
Right.
Go ahead and read.
Every man shall give as he is able according to the blessing of the Lord thy God which hath given thee.
He said, every man shall give as he is able according to the blessing of the Lord your God which he hath given thee. The Lord knows what he gave everybody in this house, sister and brother. Yep. And everybody that's listening. So now, you can't fool the Lord. But look, he said 3 times a year, all of the males. That's talking Israel now at this time. Mm-hmm. Because Israel didn't pass the message on. That make me read something else and make me wonder, who is this guy? Let's go into Acts the 8th chapter. Acts chapter 8. And we're going to start reading at verse 26. Acts 8 and verse 26. 8 and 26. Okay, go ahead.
And the angel of the Lord spake unto Philip, saying, Arise and go toward the south into the way that goeth down from Jerusalem into Gaza, which is desert. And he arose and went, and behold, a man of Ethiopia, a eunuch of great authority under Candace, queen of the Ethiopians.
Now the angel of the Lord told Philip, he was one of the apostles. He told the disciples, go down there because I want you to intercept this guy. And who did he see? A guy from Ethiopia, a eunuch. What had he been doing? Go ahead and read.
Who had the charge of all her treasures and had come to Jerusalem for the worship. Was returned and sitting in his chariot, read Isaiah the prophet. Then the Spirit said unto Philip, Go near and join thyself to this chariot. And Philip ran thither to him and heard him read the prophet Isaiah and said, Understandest what thou readest?
Now this man here, he had been down to Jerusalem to worship. Why was he down there? Look at nowadays. They said this is the Jews' holy day.
Right.
Ain't nobody doing it but people that think that believe they're Israelites or know that they're Israelites. Mm-hmm. Nobody else. Go to all the churches around and see who you go and see what people are going are holding service on this day. Right. Just go and look. They ain't. So why was this Ethiopian down in Jerusalem? And Jerusalem to worship? Because this Ethiopian was an Israelite. You know what they call him nowadays? Philosopher. He reading Isaiah, and Philip asked him, do you understand what you're reading? What did he say? Go ahead.
And he said, How can I, except some man should guide me?
Uh-huh.
And he desired Philip that he would come up and sit with him.
Now, most people don't pay no attention to this. This Ethiopian, he was very, very honest. When Philip asked him, do you understand what you read? He said, how can I unless some man guide me? Mm. People don't want to deal with that now. You know what they say now? Well, the Holy Ghost is going to teach me. Right. You ever heard him talk? You ever seen any writing that he wrote? You won't read the Bible. So if he don't write nothing in the thin air and he talk in your ear, how did he communicate all this understanding? Mm-hmm. So now, the fact that Philip talked to this guy let me know that he was an Israelite. Yep. Let's go into Acts, the 11th chapter. And we're going to start at verse 19. Acts 11 and verse 19. Okay, go ahead.
Now they which were scattered abroad upon the persecution that arose about Stephen traveled as far as Phoenice and Cyprus.
Now, who is Stephen? He's the one that they stoned to death, right? The Jews stoned to death. So after they stoned to death, then they scattered everywhere. Yeah. And Paul was a part of the one that scattered. You know the Apostle Paul? He hadn't been converted yet. So now they were scattered abroad. Read that again. Started back at the top. Go ahead and read.
Now they were scattered abroad upon the persecution that arose about Stephen. Traveled as far as Phoenice and Cyprus and Antioch, preaching the word to none but unto the Jews only.
Now they were speaking, they weren't even preaching nobody else but the Jews, sisters and brothers. Go ahead and read the next verse, because I want to make a point here. Go ahead and read.
And some of them were men of Cyprus and Cyrene, which, when they were come to Antioch, spake unto the Grecians, preaching the Lord Jesus.
See, Brother Bush, that's a contradictory. They said they didn't speak to nobody but Jews only, but here they spoke to the Greeks. Yeah, I'm an Israelite, right? But I'm an American citizen.
Exactly.
You understand? When I was in Hong Kong, I saw some blacks over there, and I went over there and said, what's going on? They don't understand me. But at least I thought they was me. You understand what I'm saying? But so these was Israelites who was Greek citizens that these guys from Antioch taught. Mm-hmm. Why is it that I know that they wasn't teaching nobody but Israelites? Because the Lord gave them a directive, sisters and brothers. This is a directive that you've never heard read in your church.
Right.
Let's go to Matthew, the 10th chapter. I mean, I don't care what church you came out of. Your preacher never read this to you. Nope. Now you got some Israelites running around saying, well, you know, the apostles only taught Israelites. They read that. You understand? That had, you know, they was Israelites. You know, the Greeks was Israelites. And I said, but no, the book started talking about the word, use the word like stranger and Gentile. Mm-hmm. That puts you outside of the nation of Israel, sisters and brothers. As brother found a way to pervert that. I've been trying to come up with it. I had to add something more to the lesson. Matthew 10 and verse 1. This is going to let you know why it is that Philip, when he taught that Ethiopian was not violating, and also and why these other guys, after they got scattered, after Stephen was stoned to death by Paul and his companion, that they was not violating. This is why they was not violating. In fact, they was carrying out a commandment. Yep. 10 and 1. Go ahead and read.
And when he had called unto him his 12 disciples, he gave them power against unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal all manner of sickness and all manner of disease.
Now these were the 12 disciples. This is Peter then. He gave them power to cast out demons, heal all kind of special diseases. Right. These are the ones that he started the church out in the new covenant with. And look what he told these guys. Skip down to verse 5. Verse 5 and read it. Go ahead.
These 12 Jesus sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not into the way of the Gentiles.
Go ahead.
And into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not.
He said, go not into the way of the Gentiles. And I don't want you to go to none of the cities of Samaria, because those were Gentiles too, that had replaced the 9 tribes. Go ahead and read.
but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
But you go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's why when Philip talked to Ethiopia, he wasn't violating. That was an Israelite. That's why the apostles, when they scattered, spoke only to the Jews because of this commandment given by Jesus. But later on, Jesus reversed it. How is that? Because Israel was too dumb to teach anybody. So they had to grow in understanding. Now when they grew in understanding, then the Lord sent Cornelius to Peter, the first Gentile to come into the church under the new covenant. And from that on, then he turned around and he sent Paul and made him the apostle to the Gentile, the one that tried to destroy the church.
Yep.
But he had to first make sure that the church had enough sense to teach somebody. You can't teach nobody if you're dumb.
No, you can't.
You understand? So this same Paul that he made apostle to the Gentile, he kept these days too. You'd never know it because everybody talks about Paul right now. Let me show you that Paul kept these days. Let's go into Acts, the 18th chapter. Acts chapter 18. Because these days mean something, sisters and brothers. Acts 18, and we're going to read one verse. Verse 18. Acts 18 and verse 18. Okay, read it.
And Paul, after this, tarried there yet a good while, and then took his leave of his brethren, and sailed thence to Syria. And with them Priscilla and Aquila, having shorn his head in Cenchrea, for he had a vow.
Go ahead.
And he came to Ephesus and left them there. But he himself entered into the synagogue and reasoned with the Jews.
Go ahead.
When they desired him to tarry longer.
See, he was in Ephesus, and he went into the synagogues. The other scripture lets you know on the Sabbath day and reasoned with the Jews. And when they desired him to tarry longer, go ahead and read.
Time with them, he consented not.
What?
But bade them farewell, saying, I must by all means keep this feast that cometh in Jerusalem. But I will return again to you, if God will. He sailed from Ephesus.
Now, they wanted him to stay longer. He said, but no, I can't stay. Because by all means, I must try and keep this feast that come in Jerusalem. Why? Because that was the commandment. Yep. All males, even after Jesus, had to show up. That's what was happening on the day of Pentecost, when the Lord sent them fiery tongues. They wasn't tarrying for the Holy Ghost. They was keeping the Feast of Weeks, which is called the Pentecost, sisters and brothers. Why? Because that was the law. So now, Paul and all Israelites kept it. And those of us that are Israelites that know about it, we're supposed to keep it. We're supposed to teach all of non-Israelites to keep it. Because these are not the feast of the Jews, sisters and brothers. These are the feast of the Lord. And the spiritual part about it, especially with this, is that the blood of the Lamb represent purging your sin, which is done on the Passover.
Right.
But once your sins have been purged, you're supposed to maintain this cleansing and continue to purge yourself. In other words, abstain from sin, sisters and brothers. This is what it's really about. So that's why it's on the 7 days. You couldn't have an 8th day because the first day was a cleansing and a purging. Once you got clean, then you had the rest of man's time to walk clean. In other words, these 7 days of unleavened bread represent the 7 days of the 7,000 years that God gave man from the day that Adam was created.
Yeah.
And now, before we get off into this food, we're going to eat a little food. We're going to drink a little wine. And the reason I read this scripture because sometimes we get people come from holiness churches. You know what I mean? Well, smoking and drinking is sin. So we're going to come up in our house and we're going to put some wine in front of you. Woo! I think somebody told me a woman was in here one time. She was upset. I'm among sinners. And I remember years ago we used to rent the Dalton Expo Center. Then a church bought it. But we was under contract, so they had to honor the contract. We threw the feast and we broke out the wine. It was a holiness church. Boy, they were sick, but they couldn't do nothing. I remember when we left, one of them walked me to my car. Like he protected me. No, he wanted to make sure that I left their premises. I know what he was doing, but I rolled with it. You understand what I'm saying? But this is why we read this, sisters and brothers, to let you know that smoking and drinking. Smoking is bad for your health, but it's not sin. And drinking is not sin. If it was, then God commanded us to sin. Now let's go read this. Deuteronomy, the 14th chapter. I remember when he was building the meat house, the guy that was pouring the foundation, he was a former alcoholic, and he kicking against drinking. And it's sin and this and that, talking about the red of the wine and all that. And I read this to him. He was messed up. To this day, I wonder if I did the right thing. Because somebody had cornswoggled him into thinking that he was sinning. That's why he wasn't drinking. Right. Now, I found out I ain't sin. He probably got drunk that night. So sometimes you have to watch what you say to certain people, even if it's true. Because sometimes some people can't handle the truth. I always wondered, I wonder if this guy go back to drinking. Because I know he was a Gentile and he turned white as a sheet. Because this hit him. Deuteronomy 14, we're going to start at verse 22. 14 and 22. Okay, go ahead.
Thou shalt truly tithe all the increase of thy seed, that the field bringeth forth year by year. Thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose to place his name there. The tithe of thy corn and of thy wine and of thy oil and the first of thy herds and of thy flocks, that thou mayest learn to fear the Lord thy God always.
Now see, this is the annual tithing, sisters and brothers. Now, you know, people tell me, you know how people run around, they reading this and see you ain't supposed to tithe with money. You're supposed to tithe with corn, sheep and corn. And I said, who out here have a corn, a cornfield? How many people have a sheep farm or a cow farm?
Right.
And like I said on the tithing lesson, I wonder how many bricks we would have got if I'd gone over there with a duck and 2 cows. And they said, this is the only time you're supposed to tithe. No, this is an annual tithing. So each one of these feasts, you're supposed to bring this to supply the feast. We just use the tithing from year to year. But if we really enforce the law, we wouldn't use no tithing to give you money to do this feast. You'd have to supply the extra money for it. Mm-hmm. But he said, still, this is an annual tithing, and you're supposed to do this that you might learn to fear the God. And now look what he says about distance. Go ahead and read.
If the way be too long for thee, so that thou art not able to carry it, or the place be too far for thee.
Go ahead.
Which the Lord thy God shall choose to set his name there. When the Lord thy God hath blessed thee, then shalt thou turn it into money.
Now, if the way is too long, you can't drive your cows 100, 200 miles, or you can't drive your flock, or you can't bring that corn.
Right.
I want you to sell it. That's why he said, I shall turn it into money. Go ahead and read.
And bind up the money in thine hand, and shall go into the place which the Lord thy God shall choose.
Go ahead.
And thou shalt bestow that money for whatsoever thy soul lusteth after.
And you use that money to buy whatsoever your soul lusted after. Go ahead and read.
For oxen.
For oxen.
For sheep.
For sheep.
Or for wine.
For wine.
Or for strong drink.
And for Jack Daniel. Go ahead and read.
Or for whatsoever thy soul desireth. And thou shalt eat there before the Lord thy God, and thou shalt rejoice, thou and thine household.
And you shall eat before the Lord your God and rejoice there before your household. Did I say, what is strong drink? That's whiskey, ain't it?
Yep.
The Lord said do this, didn't he?
Yep.
Why? Now I'm telling y'all, don't get off no strong drink. You get a ticket out here. I am not coming to get you out of jail, and I will not pay your bail. In fact, I won't know you. What he must have slipped in the back door. Don't even try. But I'm letting you know, sisters and brothers, that everything can be done if you do it in moderation. God said you can have it. We ain't got no whiskey, but we got plenty of wine. But I want to tell you, do not get drunk. So what we're going to do, we're going to eat us some food, we're going to drink us a little wine, and we're going to go home and thank God that he gave us the wisdom and the strength to carry out this holy day.
Whatsoever he do, he will prosper. Ooh, and I'm telling you, kiss the sun, kiss the sun, kiss the sun. Let his light shine. Oh, kiss the sun, kiss the sun, kiss the sun. Kiss the sun, kiss the sun. Every knee shall bow, every tongue must confess that Jesus is the Lord. His dominion shall be from sea to shining sea, to the